Hello and welcome to the Moonshine Jesus Show. Thank you for joining us on this episode. We'll be discussing season 2 of Silo. We're excited about this. We like Silo so much. This is our third show that we've done on Silo. We like it that much. Some quick housekeeping and let you know that we are brought to you by Progressive Christianity or a great place for all of your progressive Christian needs. A reminder, of course, to follow us, the Moonshine Jesus Show. Follow our Facebook page as well as make sure that you're signed up to get the podcast at all the places you get the podcast. And finally, very important, this is never a spoiler-free zone. It is always a spoiler-full zone. Am I correct, Caleb?
You're absolutely correct, and we
you
delight
enjoy
in
doing
spoiling
that?
it. I do.
Yes,
I love it.
absolutely.
I love it whenever I'm in the know and people don't know about it, and I get to ruin it. So I want to do that today.
It is the best. It's simply the best. Yeah, I just love it.
Tina.
Right, you gotta love it. So but before we get too far into this, we certainly need beverages to enjoy our time together and our discussion. It is the Moonshine Jesus Show after all. So I'm curious, this is our third Silo show. What beverage did you go with on this one?
Okay, so I was inspired by the final scene where they were at this bar in the before times, and in that bar, they were drinking an old fashioned. And I've actually been to that bar, Mark. In fact, the last time I was in DC, I was in that bar, and I also had an old fashioned. And so, in honor of the before times and my real life experience, I've got an old fashioned here, and that's what I'm drinking. How about you, Mark? What are you drinking today?
Well, I went completely the opposite. I said, okay, well, here we are in the silo. They don't have access to a lot of things. Over time, they're going to work through all of their bottles of wine and whiskeys that they happen to have around. So what are they going to do? They're going to make their own alcohol. And we don't very frequently on the Moonshine Jesus Show.
You've got real moonshine.
Have moonshine. So in a little tiny baby mason jar, I have some moonshine here that I will be enjoying. So if you hear me coughing, you'll know that it's strong moonshine.
Yeah, you make that yourself, Mark?
Oh yeah, in the still out back. Oh, I shouldn't say that out loud.
No.
No. Get me in trouble. No, I can't say that I actually made that, and I won't go into any detail about where this particular moonshine came from, just because I don't think that's the wisest thing to do. So
the store,
the store, the ABC store. It's those little fake moonshine things that they sell there. I could have drank it straight out of that, but no, it was better just to put it in this. So anyway, here we go. We're going to take a quick break, enjoy a little bit of our beverages, and come back on the other side where Caleb and I will going to geek out a little bit about season 2. Moonshine Jesus. Moonshine Jesus. Moonshine Jesus. Moonshine Jesus, won't you shine a light?
Welcome back, everyone, to the Moonshine Jesus Show. We are entering our Geeking Out section where we geek out for a little bit and really explore the in-depth, nerdy stuff about shows. And then in a little while, we'll talk about theology and politics. So today we're talking about Silo Season 2. Woo. And Mark, in honor of how I did this the first time, I'll say it just like this. In a dystopian future where a community exists in a giant silo that extends 144 stories underground, 10,000 people live in a society bound by regulations they believe are meant to protect them. This season sees the main character, Juliet, travel to a different silo where her silo deals with a potential uprising. Now, Mark, I was going back and I was listening to the
I gotta say, that time I took it a lot more seriously than the first time. The first time we
There's
read it, we were like,
well,
"This is gonna
there's a
be."
little bit more honestly, there's a little bit more reverence this time because I
Yeah,
knew it was
that's
actually a
fair.
good show. When you suggested this the first time, I thought it was gonna be terrible. I'm not
Yes, you
gonna
did.
lie. I
I
read
remember it. I
because I think I
remember.
just, like, copied and pasted this, and I'm like, "Is that
Is
real?
that for
Is that
real?
the real?" And I'm like, "Oh, actually, this show is really good." I
Yeah.
shouldn't have judged, before. But I thought, "A silo underground? Really? Are they out of ideas?" But it was really good. And so, Mark, we watched
Yeah.
season 1, as you mentioned. We talked about it mid-season, then we talked about it at the end of the season. At the end of the season, you had us make some predictions,
Mhm.
and I went back and listened to those predictions, Mark, and I've got to say you fared a lot better than I did with your predictions
Yeah,
because
yeah, I
you
did
you
okay.
you asked me what I thought was going to happen, and I said I thought they were going to go to the city, which I now think is Atlanta. I think they're in Georgia, and I think
I'm
it's Atlanta,
100% sure it's
Georgia.
Atlanta. It even
And
looks
so
like Atlanta.
it does, and she did not go to Atlanta, and you
Mm.
said that you thought she was gonna go explore maybe multiple silos, but at least one silo, and that
Right?
that silo is gonna be very different from her silo. Okay, so she did do that, and it was, very different from her silo, but you didn't stop there with being correct, Mark. You also
With being correct. I'm good then.
that
Okay, keep going.
that you thought Lucas was going to come out of the mines and was going to play a very important role in this season, which he did. And you said you thought he was going to go to the door down below the water, which he
Yeah,
did.
yes, you
And
did.
you thought that door was going to connect to the silos, the other silos, which we don't know
We
if it
still don't
does
know.
or not. They allude to the fact that there might be poison gas in there, but we don't really know if that's true or not. And
We
so,
know that there's probably poison gas in some pipeline of some sort, but not necessarily that one.
not necessarily there. So we don't know. But you also said that this other side was going to be different. She's going to have a different experience. She's going to spend the season there. So Mark, you were right. I want to know, how's it feel to be to be so right about all of that? Because I can tell you, it doesn't feel great to be wrong about all that.
You know what? I honestly, this is not a joke. This sounds like I don't because I love movies and
Yeah.
television and writing and stories, and like my first undergraduate degree was in English, and I spent most of my time looking at movies and that type of thing. Um, I frequently just see what a writer's doing,
Mhm.
and it tells me what's about to happen. And while there's a lot of joy in understanding the craft that much, there's also this disappointment of, well, I'm not going to be surprised. Like I am going to be surprised every now and then, but it's not going to be most of the time.
Well, and it certainly wasn't this season because what was it, a
Yeah.
year and a half ago when we talked about this?
Yeah.
You wrote. I mean, you could have just written this season, Mark, because you pretty much hit the nail
Uh,
on the head here. So I'm curious, Mark. So we've watched 2 seasons of this show. I think probably going to get a third season. Well,
I
no,
think they've announced 3 and 4.
3 and 4. Okay, and I
I'm
know
pretty
this is based
sure.
on the book where there's it's like a book trilogy. So there's
Yeah, and
several
it's the
books.
book started off as like mini books because the publishers wanted something different, and the author just said, "I'll just publish it on my own on Kindle and mini books or something like that." They are a trilogy now, I believe. I think
And
that's right.
so we know there's material there. So
Yes.
I'm curious, how did you think that season 2 compared to season 1?
Um, I liked it a lot. I thought it was a pretty good follow up to season 1. I didn't find it quite as season 1 was very much what has become known as a mystery box show.
Mhm.
Like it's a mystery upon a mystery, and we're always chasing a mystery. Season 2 didn't have quite as many mysteries stacked in it. So that excitement that you got off of like the first time you saw Lost of following it and following it and following it and trying to figure out, you didn't get quite the depth of that. I did like seeing the other silo and trying to use what we're learning there to piece together what's going on in silo 18. Yeah, they're in 18. Trying to piece that together. I liked that part, but it didn't feel like were as many. And maybe I'm wrong here because it was quite a few months ago. The way my memory is telling me, it didn't feel like there were quite as many as big mysteries this time.
No. I agree with you. I don't think there were, because the big mystery in the first one, right, we had all these smaller mysteries. We wondered what everyone's role was, who was really the big bad, what the different levels were, and just the general mystery of the silo. But the big mystery was, is it really like not survivable outside the silo?
Right.
And this season we went in already knowing that because we got
Yeah.
we got the answer. And so
But
there
they
was
did do that one little scene that made me go, what is going on? So
which scene? Which scene?
when she goes over to Silo 17,
Hmm.
she meets Solo.
Yeah.
And when she goes in, we see her crossing all of these dead bodies who aren't in
Yeah.
any suits.
Yeah.
But he says, Solo tells her, and we see a flashback of someone, I
Mhm.
think, holding a tattered green flag, that they didn't die immediately, but they weren't in suits.
True. Yeah.
So I go, Wait, is the radiation not that strong? Or his parents being scientists, had they figured, I don't know,
I
something
I thought
out?
ma
Or
I thought maybe that was the people who didn't go up, who didn't storm, and who stayed there and were, like, fighting for food that
well,
we
we
ultimately
literally
saw
saw them running out with a flag and not
I
instantly
not
being
instantly dying.
yeah.
So
So I
you
don't know.
think
I feel like it was a hint. I feel like that
okay,
was a
so you
hint.
think
I
you
could be
think that
completely wrong.
you think that it is survivable still up there in some way, if there's some
I
kind of
think there's
treatment
some way.
some kind of
Yeah,
treatment with yeah.
that's what I think. Some kind of treatment or something that the scientists had his parents, science parents who were scientists
Yeah.
started to figure out,
Mhm.
didn't quite have right,
Yeah.
but not a he was the only one that was left, so there wasn't any way to follow up on that. I feel like it's survivable, whatever it is.
Yeah. So there's still some question about it, but not the same kind of
Yeah,
big question that we have.
not at all. Yeah,
Clearly without some kind of special thing, a suit or maybe there's some kind of pill, radiation pill or something
yeah. Who
that they're
knows?
taking, but not survivable. So I think you're right that it was harder to feel the tension, I think, in this
Yeah.
season. And
Hmm.
I also think that while it was a cool concept to have Juliet in another silo, I think that also kind of damaged the season a little bit. We didn't see
Yeah.
Juliet facing off against Bernard in the same way. And
Yeah.
we did see that her colleagues, her friends, her family was facing off against Bernard, but it wasn't the same as the main character. The main character was detached, was having
Yeah.
another
Very much so.
experience the whole season. So on Rotten Tomatoes, season 1 has an 88% fresh rating and season 2 has a 96% fresh rating. I think if it were up to me, I think I would flip
Flip
those.
those.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
feel
kind
like
of see
season 1
that.
was a stronger season.
I see that as well. It's not saying at all that season
Yeah,
two was a bad season. It was a reasonably good follow up, particularly depending on what they do with season three. It
yeah,
could be that it's a lot of good setup, that they offered us a lot of hints and
yeah,
clues that are going to get us ready for season three,
yeah.
maybe.
I would say too that both the structure of the first season and the structure of the second season left me feeling similarly, which was I was real engaged at the beginning of the season and at the end of the season, and had a little bit of trouble staying engaged in the middle part
Yeah,
of the season. I'm thinking I
I
need
think that's fair.
something a little bit more. Okay, so I want to get to the two endings, Mark,
Okay.
because uh, again, spoiler alert. And so
Woo.
we did kind of get two endings here.
Yeah,
And the first one is Juliet is coming back to her silo. She has put up a sign that says, "Don't go out, not safe." And then she's gone out and she doesn't think she's going to get in. And Bernard is trying to leave the silo just as she's coming in. And then
yeah.
we see them both kind of step into the furnace room that fires up, purifies the air. I'm curious, Mark, what do you think's going to happen? Do you think that in the next season, you think they're both going to survive? You think they're both going to die? Think we'll get one, not the other? What do you think the
I
outcome of that's
definitely
going to be?
think I think we get one, not the other. I think Juliet survives. She was in a fire suit, man. They
Right.
augmented a fire suit to keep her make her
They
be
made a
able to go outside.
big old deal about her getting
Yeah,
that
about the
fire
fact that
suit.
yeah. So you don't make that big of a deal and then put her in a fire for her to die in it.
Right.
No. So, and Bernard, I think his character ran its arc, and having him die and then having to learn what it was that he was told that made him feel so hopeless, which I think is sort of probably the big reveal of the whole show anyway. Why are we in these silos? How did we get put here? What's the purpose? What's the outcome likely to be? Whatever. I think that's what he got told essentially, and that he felt hopeless. And so I do think he dies. I think it's smart of them to finish it by not telling us so that we spend a off season wondering about the two of them. But I mean, it's pretty straightforward, right?
I think for sure Juliet's gonna survive. I
Yeah.
mean, they did make the whole big deal about her getting the fire suit. She was gonna get the
Right.
other suit. It had holes in it, and so she puts on the fire suit. He
Hmm.
Solo tests it, and it's all good. So like that, yes. And she's a main character. I mean, the show
Yeah.
doesn't really
It's
work.
the whole show changes if she's not around.
That's right. That's right. I mean, look at the
And you
the
haven't
picture we've
spent enough
got
time
here.
on any other character to let them be the lead after 2
No,
seasons.
no. I mean, look, she's
They would
front
have
and
had to be
center here in
right,
the
right.
picture. Like
In the logos we have.
That's right. I think that Tim Robbins plays an interesting foe. So I think it would be kind of too bad for the series if he doesn't survive. I'm gonna put my money on maybe he'll survive. I think maybe he'll
Okay.
survive, and maybe he'll switch forces. Maybe we'll see the silo unite, maybe against AI, the intelligence that we've got there.
That we
So I
got.
think maybe he'll have a role reversal. I think it'll be
Okay.
interesting to see. I also want to ask you about the second ending here. From the
Yes.
before times. And so in that ending, we see a congressman and a reporter meet to talk about a dirty bomb and radiation. I'm curious, Mark, what do you think that tells us about how we ended up in the silo? Does it give enough to reveal what happened, or what's your bet on why they're in that silo?
I think that's I think they're trying to make us think that's it. I think it is. I think the dirty bomb is indicative of we live in a dangerous world. Think about this: 51 silos, 144 stories. Is that right? Whatever number of stories
Yep.
it is. How long is it going to take to build those?
A
A
long time.
long time,
A
right?
long time.
So I think that they was just using that to show us what a dangerous world this is that they live in. That these kinds of things have started to happen, and that there has to be. I think this is a much longer process before they actually end. I think it's still within. There was a hint. It's still within the lifetime of those two people
Mhm.
because she was holding the rubber ducky
Okay.
Pez.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she's definitely one of the people that's in there, which I think means obviously he's one of the people that is going to be in there originally. Um, I think there's something else. This isn't a show that would make it so cut and dry.
Mhm.
Um, this season, I've started feeling more like the experiment's not quite the word. I think that we see Atlanta on the horizon.
Mhm.
There's people living in Atlanta.
Mm.
That's what
Mhm.
I think.
Yeah.
I think there's something completely different going on here at the silo that we can't quite figure out. That there is a reason why they're trying to keep them in, um,
And
even beyond that it's dangerous outside.
okay, and the people in Atlanta, you think that there's people who have survived some kind of fallout, or you think there are people who are living their regular lives, and this is just some kind of experiment or something like that?
I think that they're living their regular lives.
Mm.
That so we see the landscape. I think that some kind
Yeah.
of bomb was dropped on some part of just Georgia, just outside of Atlanta,
Uh huh.
and it created the need to rush people into these silos. I think it was a false creation. I think it
Mm.
was like scare people. The people that I think are in Atlanta, I think that they are being told that that's like a fallout area. You can't go there, and it's dangerous, and so no one ever goes there. But I think they're doing something else. I don't know what. I just think they're
Yeah.
doing something else with these folks. And I think that's part of what Bernard learned. I think Bernard thought our silo is going to repopulate the earth. And I think
Mhm.
he found out no, not at all, not even close. Earth's already populated. And by the way, you're not even the only silo. There's a whole bunch of you, and they can kill you off anytime they feel like it if you're not playing by the rules. That I think that's yeah, that's where I'm kind of
I
falling.
was ready to take it at face value, but I'm not going to argue with you, Mark,
I
because
don't know.
I know you're going to be right about this
I
because I
don't know
have
if that's
seen the
true.
proof.
This one
The
feels a
proof
little
is
more.
in season 2. You know,
This one
season
feels a little
1.
more far fetched. I don't know. We'll see.
Well, we'll know when we talk about season
Right?
3.
Yeah,
But
fair enough.
I have a bunch more questions I'd like to ask you because this was
Yeah.
a really rich season. There's a lot going on, but
Yeah.
I want to make sure we get to the Theopolitico stuff. So why don't we take a quick break, have another drink, and come back for our Theopolitico segment.
Welcome back to the Moonshine Jesus Show. Thank you for joining us for our Theopolitico segment. So, Caleb, Juliet basically uncovers the secret surveillance that's being used by judicial to monitor every level of the silo. I got two questions about that.
Mm-hmm.
One, how does that level of control within the story impact the rebellion brewing down deep?
Mm-hmm.
And then moving it into our world, what does the show suggest about how authoritarian systems suppress uprisings through fear and manipulation?
Yeah, so we certainly see that when they discover that surveillance, that it definitely stirs a distrust of what's going on in the silo, and
Yeah.
not only distrust about like whether or not they have their best interests in mind in the silo, but then that creates a whole series of distrust about like whether they're lying to them about absolutely everything.
Everything. Yeah.
And so then they, of course, use that as a tool to manipulate those in authority for the uprising. So I think in terms of how that relates to us, that I think we certainly see surveillance of citizens as an important concern that a lot of us sign our rights away every time we click an agreement.
Agree.
Right. And so that we know that those companies are not real concerned with protecting our personal data, that they're concerned with making a profit. And so we've seen over and over again our personal information sold. And so I think that we now are living in a time where it's relatively easy for the government to learn just about anything they want
Yeah.
about us, from where we're going, where we've been based on our GPS data,
Mhm.
even our private communications with people. You can theoretically, with a warrant, get access to anybody's phone logs and text messages that you want, but also even things like Google searches and stuff. Like
Yeah.
every aspect of our lives is open to examination, and so I think that's something to be concerned about, especially when we're thinking about authoritarianism, because a lot of times we have signed all this stuff over half thinking or not thinking. But also, I think hoping in the back of our mind that the government ultimately had our best interests at heart. And I think we've seen pretty confidently that that is just not true.
Yeah.
And especially right now, I don't think uh, that uh, that our authoritarian leaders are concerned with anything other than
Mhm.
remaining in power. And I think we saw that this week too with the announcement that surprised no one, that Trump's going to try and subvert the law to limit terms to 2
Right.
terms. I mean, that surprised absolutely no one. We knew that whenever he got elected,
Sure.
that's exactly what was going to happen. And so I think like continued loss of privacy and rights are going to fester. I
Yeah.
think I hope maybe an uprising of some kind to keep the government in check. So I think that some kind of nonviolent rebellion is going to be necessary, Mark, because I'm not sure how we get out of this. You know,
Yeah.
when structures that we have traditionally depended on, like say the courts, are no longer honored, or are no longer respected and listened to by the executive branch of government, because the judicial branch can say whatever they want, the legislative branch can say whatever they want, but if the executive branch doesn't respect that and doesn't follow those decisions, then
Yeah.
we're at kind of a standstill. So that's the way I'm thinking about it. Mark, what do you think?
No, I'm completely with you, and I think because of all of that, we've entered into a new era particularly in terms of Americans, but probably in terms of the world as well. Of that, we used to believe that certain governments did, as you said, watch out for our best interests, that we could trust in them to promote the higher good of the populace and even individuals. We are now seeing that our system is so broken that someone can get there and prevent any of that from actually happening and can then act against it, actually. Um, and a lot of what we're seeing now is the fear and the way that the fear is manipulated and the way that they're intentionally using fear to manipulate and scare us to prevent us from doing exactly what you're talking about. And that is to have nonviolent resistance or nonviolent rebellions, essentially.
Mhm.
And I agree. I think that that is what's it's going to take at this point. A lot of it's going to need to be monetary attached. It's going to feel like to them that it really hits their ability to make money because that's where all of this is coming from. A lot of us, you, me, so many people have been shouting for a long time about the dangers of unregulated capitalism and how it's
Mhm.
going to hurt people. And when we make money our God, that it's not. We ultimately are losing sight of any real morality when we're
Yeah.
placing value on something that's basically made up and ignoring real people's lives while we do it. So, um, yeah, it's a dangerous time. I think it's an important lesson to be learned from this season of how all of that monitoring can be used then and turned into fear tactics to try to keep us at bay, and that we've got to make the decision that we are going to act out anyway.
Mm,
Uh,
mm,
Keep moving forward. I got so many questions, we're not going to be able to get to them at all. I'm sure of it. But so one of the things they have in the show is the pact, which is their
mhm,
rules and regulations. And
mhm,
Renard in particular was really hyper focused on following those. It's treated sort of like a sacred scripture. Yes,
mhm,
it's unchangeable, it's absolute, even as it's weaponized to sort of justify executions and
mhm.
cover ups. So I've got two questions for you again. How does season two challenge the morality of clinging to foundational text without accountability?
Mhm.
And two, does it suggest that worshiping the rules can blind us to justice? And I might come back with the three when you answer that.
Yeah. So yeah, certainly it's true that that text can be weaponized to hurt people rather than to be liberative of people, and so we of course see this with the gospel. We see the Bible used all the time as a weapon where people,
Yeah.
despite the instruction that we should observe the spirit of the law and not the letter of the law, that there are people who want to use the letter of the biblical text instead of the spirit of the text. And
Yeah.
one of the things I like to tell people is, if you're reading scripture and your interpretation doesn't pass the criterion of love that Jesus gave us, the spirit of the law,
Right.
then your theological interpretation is wrong, and it's
Yeah.
not compatible with the teachings of Jesus. I
Yep.
think that can also be said not just about scripture, but I think the Constitution too, is if we're looking to the letter of the Constitution, like a conservative reading of the Constitution, trying to really limit
Oh,
everything,
yeah.
or if we are embracing the spirit of the Constitution as well.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, certainly that can be used to weaponize. What's remind me question number two, Mark?
You've basically gotten at it.
Yeah.
All of this suggests that worshiping the rules can blind us to justice.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It blinds us to justice because I think like LGBT people are a case in point that people
Right.
use the Bible as a weapon to hurt LGBT people. and to oppress and marginalize them in church and society.
Oh yeah.
And so Jesus's primary concern seems to be about justice for those who are living on the margins of a variety of situations. And so
Sure.
certainly LGBTQ plus folks are a part of that. And so I think that we deny them justice by by focusing so much on the letter of the law that we can't embrace Jesus's basic teachings. And so I think that that's one of the important things that progressive Christianity has to offer is it's a reminder, Mark, that like
Mm.
if you get so hyper focused on the rules that you really miss out on what the text is even supposed to be doing. And so I think it's a more authentic way of following Jesus for that reason, because it reminds
Yeah.
us to follow generally what Jesus is asking us to do.
I
You have a third
completely agree.
question?
I'm going to go ahead and squeeze a third question in. I absolutely am. So, in the show, as unrest grows in the lower levels and
Yeah.
food supplies or supplies in general become scarce, how does that end up dividing the up top and the down deepers, and how does it intensify their class resentment? And what does that say about the sustainability of a society built on stratification? And then, of course, we'll move it into today. Does it have anything to say about what our crashing economy could do to the US?
Yeah, so I think it's interesting too because how they got into the silo, I think also depends on what class they were in to begin with, and that was something
Agreed.
interesting that I was thinking about throughout this is if there was some kind of a natural disaster or if there was some kind of a disaster caused by like nuclear weapons, for instance, then likely it's the upper class people who are able to afford places in the silo.
Right.
Or if it's not that and it's some kind of an experimentation, then likely it's lower class people who make up the silo. But either way, once they're in there, there's the stratification that you're talking about. The those who are on the upper decks and those who are lower. And so I think that we certainly see the division there, and it makes it easy, I think, to foster resentment, and it creates a society in which everyone is dependent upon, like, for instance, the folks in mechanical, and yet
Yeah.
the folks in mechanical are not taken care of. And so when the folks in mechanical unite, that whenever they unionize and they rally together and they say we're not going to take this anymore, they're really unstoppable. And so I
Right.
think that that is an important lesson for us today, that we continue to see the class divide grow ever starker, that we continue to see people who are the richest just getting richer and telling us that no, it's all of the people at the bottom who are the problem.
Yeah.
And so I think the only way for this class divide to really settle is for folks who are not the top 1% to unite together and say that this is unacceptable, that
Yeah.
we're not going to allow this to happen anymore. What do
Yeah,
you
I
think, Mark?
completely agree. I think I'll just augment that just a little bit, that as our economy continues to crash, which is going to do, there are going to be striations in availability of goods and cost of
Mhm,
goods and who can afford it. And a lot of folks, it's going to be easy to try to justify your access to them over someone else by villainizing other folks,
mhm,
by
mhm,
subhumanizing other folks, and that based on exactly what you just finished with, was why we have to use our best selves to fight against doing that, and to recognize that that is just yet one other way of dividing us. And that's our real power, is staying together, is being united, and that we've got to do whatever it takes. Don't fall victim to what the lack of goods could cause, could lead to. That we need to be united and help each other out. Turn to love of neighbor, as we've kind of been alluding to over and over again during this segment, and recognize that that is our strength, and that is the thing that will help us overcome.
mhm. I love that.
All right, let's take another quick drop, because we don't want to miss out on our last episode, our last segment, where we have the opportunity to make each other look stupid.
Welcome back to the Moonshine Jesus Show and our Make Me Look Stupid segment, where we try to make each other look stupid in a variety of ways. Maybe by asking a question that we don't understand, or maybe by making a prediction, which is what Mark had me do at the end of last season. And he got all
Yes.
of those right, and I got all of those wrong. I look stupid today already. I get it. Um, and so, or sometimes we just ask questions,
Yeah.
something that we're curious about.
Curiosities.
And so I've got a question, Mark. I don't know that it's a really a very make me look stupid question. It's just something
Mhm.
I'm curious about. Um, we've gotten a lot of shows lately about people like being underground and like trying to like bury underground and be away from the outside world. And so offhand, there's this one Silo. There's also Severance, which takes place in an underground floor, an
Mhm.
underground working facility. There's Paradise, which takes
Paradise.
place underground, where they built a whole community underground. There's Fallout that we talked about recently
Right.
that
Love it.
takes place underground, mini vaults, kind of like silos underground. So, Mark, I want to know what's with this? What's with the proliferation of like hiding underground right now? And can we expect to see more of these kinds of shows in the future? Or do you think we're fully saturated and we're done being underground?
I'm going to answer that backwards. Yeah, I think we're approaching full saturation in that. I think people are going to start seeing it and going, "Oh, another one of those."
Mhm.
Uh, there is value to it, though, particularly when you're trying to describe a group of people as being isolated from reality, isolated from creation. Like when they are there, they are insular, they are stuck. There isn't this wide area you can go out to. It's a very limited space. There's no access to reality. Everything that's in there is created, man made, humankind made. And so there is this great it's sort of a shortcut to full isolation and removal from creation. So I see why people do it, and it works. But the more people do it, the less it works. So that's my answer. I don't know.
You know, I get it. I kind of feel like burying my head underground at the moment. And like
Fair
there are
enough.
times when I'm like, okay, I think I'm done engaging with reality right now. I mean, in some ways, I think that's why I'm super into sci-fi fantasy stuff. Like it
Sure,
provides me a momentary time to bury my head under the sand. But
absolutely.
uh, and I do think that it can be advantageous to do that some to like let yourself relax and
Yeah,
disengage from stuff because people right now, I think in particular, are feeling real overwhelmed. I hear that a lot in
obviously, yeah.
ministry that people are like, I don't know what to do. I'm not able to function. I'm feeling increasingly depressed and anxious about everything, and I
Hmm.
get that. And so I think that it can be helpful. I think though that we can't fully disengage from
Right.
from what's going on because that's exactly what an
They won't.
authoritarian government wants us to do,
Mhm.
right? So like we've got to continue to resist, and I think the way that we do that is exactly what we were talking about in the last segment: is that we unite together and we try to do to really make a difference. So I agree. I kind of feel like I'm about done seeing shows that are all
Yeah,
about being underground. Like
I
I
agree.
feel like
Although
that.
although I don't want anyone to hear this and it's not and but I want if anyone who's important who makes these things is serious, please continue making Fallout and Silo.
Yeah, that's what I was
Please.
gonna say. Except I said it, but if I had my choice, that was literally gonna be my next preface. But I want to continue seeing Fallout because because Fallout is amazing. I
I completely agree.
I don't even remember the last time I did this, Mark, but like we went through and watched the first season for Moonshine Jesus, and then I immediately went and watched the entire
Again,
season again, and I just
I
don't
get it.
ever do that. I'm like,
No,
oh, I want to watch
either.
something new, but Fallout, I love.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Thanks for answering my question. Have you got one for me?
I actually I had 4. We kind of hit 2 of them. So
Oh,
I'm down.
did
And they
I
were my
steal him? Because I gotta tell you, I'm really
you did
disappointed in myself so
you
far this
haven't been
season
doing
because,
this
like,
enough.
last
Yeah.
season, I rocked it. Last
Yeah,
season,
you
I
did.
I stole at
You
least one
really
question from you every time,
every
but this
time.
season, no,
This time I
nothing.
kinda gave you one of them. I kinda
Yep.
walked into talking about, when Lucas talks to Bernard and Bernard gives up and what might have been said. So I gave my answer already, so I feel like that wouldn't be as exciting. Although I am kinda curious what your answer is, but I just know you. You're gonna go, "Oh, I think what you said." That's what you're gonna
I think
I'm gonna ask you a
I
question.
I
So
well,
I'm not gonna ask
maybe if you'd be wrong every once in a while about some of your predictions.
uh, then you did steal my question. I was going to ask about Bernard and Juliet and who survives the flames. So now I'm down to two, and one of them's a very broad question, and one of them's a very specific question. Um, just because I think it's more interesting, and we've done a little bit of the broad question already, I'm going to ask the more specific one. So, why does the algorithm
Mhm.
send Sims and his son away, but has Sims' wife, Camille, stay?
I think she's already in league with it. I think she
Ah.
knew a lot more already throughout the season than appears on the surface. Like she was really kind of manipulating a lot of the stuff behind the scenes. We see that
Mhm.
Sims wasn't really in charge of
He
much.
was
Like he
not.
didn't even really have his own ideas. She was telling him where he should go, what he should do, the strategic move of how he should
Mhm.
be in charge, how he should gain power. Then she was helping the folks from the down deep get back down there, and
Yeah.
she really was kind of manipulating the outcomes.
Yeah.
I think she's working with AI already, and
Mm.
that's what that's about. I think that Bernard was kind of a false big bad. I think the AI,
Oh, I think that's the whole reason he's in the story. Is
yeah.
the No, I think Sims. Sorry, I thought Sims
Oh,
was the false big bad. I thought he was there
oh,
to distract from Bernard a little bit during when Bernard was actually the part of the big bad.
big bad. I think neither one of them really knew what was going on
Yeah, I think
fully,
you're
and
right.
I
Yeah.
think that Camille, I think she does. I think she's
Ah,
already been in league with the AI, the algorithm. That's what I
yeah.
think. How about you? What do you think, Mark?
I think that the algorithm knows that this silo is getting close to needing whatever they call it, where they wipe out everybody,
Hmm.
and that the silo is going to try. So the silo, I think, has been monitoring everybody through all of the monitors, knows
Hmm.
what's going on, saw that Camille is kind of a skilled technician at what you should do and how you should move and where you should go to make things happen. And
Hmm.
that the algorithm is going to try to get Camille to be the new mayor. But I think that Juliet coming in, that the silo is going to want Juliet to be the new mayor, and I think that this is a setup for tension between the two, of a person, Camille, who ultimately wants it, and a person, uh, Juliet, who really doesn't want it, battling for the position, and seeing how it plays out. I think Juliet will win, reluctantly, but I think that's what I think is going on. It's the beginning of the setup of that.
I think that could be a really interesting season 3 setup.
Hmm.
Two women, two in charge, and one
Yeah,
kind of that would likely foster continued authoritarianism, and
right.
one who is a person of the people who has
Yeah,
been really
could be.
elected to
I
to
think that that's going to be half of the story. I think because they waited to the very end of season 2 to give us the scene in the bar.
yeah,
I think at least half of the season is going to be the backstory and the early story of the side. Like, how did it come about? Why did it come about? How long did it take? And then maybe even the first year in whatever number of silos got populated in that first year.
yeah,
I
yeah.
That's my guess.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think that sounds like really interesting. I do want to say a couple of things, respond to a couple of comments that we've gotten. So we appreciate
Mm,
you all listening. And so one is just
absolutely.
a reminder that the first book of the series is called Wool. So if you want to read the books
Yeah.
based on Silo, it's called the Silo series, and the first book is called Wool. And the other one is an ask for recommendation on books on exegesis for Catholic who loves traditions but not the laws. And Mark, I don't know what you think about this, but I think it's interesting because maybe not specific books, although I think books by Jesus Seminar folks, I think by John
Fantastic.
Shelby Spong or by Marcus Borg, John Dominic Crossan
Cross.
are great places to start on how to approach biblical exegesis in general. And I would recommend Meeting Jesus Again for the First time. That's the book I always recommend to
That
everybody. It's
great place
is it?
to
Did that
jump in.
impact you?
Big time. It changed a lot for me. It was the first time I read that book. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. And I think that really helped me reconcile a lot of
Agreed.
stuff. But I think, just a word about like liturgy and belief. Like, I do think that there is room for people to express different forms of liturgy and tradition, that whatever it is that is meaningful to you, if it's meaningful to you, then go for it, and if
Right.
and the stuff that
Absolutely.
isn't meaningful to you, then it's okay to shed too.
Absolutely.
Do you
100%.
have
The big thing on that
perspective?
is, and I completely agree.
Mhm.
I know that for some folks, liturgy is comforting. It gives them
Mhm.
patterns. It lets them kind of get to a more spiritual place. I think the big thing is we end up in so many things in this world, ending up feeling like in order for it to matter to me, I need it needed to matter to other people to the point that I'll force them to act like it matters to them, so it'll validate my need. And we need to learn to get past that.
Yeah.
We need to be a lot more open to, if this works for you, fantastic, wonderful. I celebrate it with you as long as it's not hurting other people. And we should be the same in the opposite direction. If this doesn't work for you, fantastic. I understand. I celebrate it for you as long as you're not hurting other people by ignoring it.
You know,
That's where I fall on it.
I had literally that conversation with with someone as I was leaving church yesterday. I'm like, I hate to
Yeah.
wear these robes. Someone was asking about the difference between like titles and ministers, and I'm like, well,
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter. It's all made up anyway. Same with like why you like why you wear what you wear in worship.
Right.
It's something that people decided was meaningful at some point, and they wore it. So if
Yeah.
it's meaningful, great. If it's not meaningful, cut it.
100%.
So thanks for those questions. We appreciate all of you watching every week. And we need to
Absolutely.
tell you what we're going to watch next week. So Mark and I were chatting ahead of time,
Yeah.
and we're both Star Trek fans.
Big ones.
And we thought maybe Section 31 might be good.
I think it's a good one.
It's a good one. It just came out this year, I think.
Just
Right, Mark?
no, well, we're still in March. So yeah, early last month. Came out in
Okay,
February, I'm
yeah.
pretty
So
sure.
it's a spinoff from Star Trek Discovery. It's got
Yep.
Michelle Yao about this secret section of the Federation that
Yep.
does investigations and stuff. So I think it ought to be a lot of fun. Anything with Michelle Yao has
Gonna be
got to be worth
fantastic.
watching.
She's
So why
so
don't you all?
incredible.
She is
And
incredible.
she's great in that role. Man, she embodied
Yeah.
that character so fully. It's incredible.
Yeah, and finally getting the recognition that she deserves
So
after Everything
deserves.
Everywhere All at Once.
Mhm.
So, which another
Wow.
prediction you did, Mark? You're like, this movie's gonna win all
Win
kinds of awards.
12
I'm like,
Oscars.
really? I don't know, Mark. So, again, you were right.
I'm a movie
Okay,
geek.
so
I am a movie geek.
you are. You're good. Okay, so next week we'll talk about Section 31. Thank you all for being here, and we'll see you next time on the Moonshine Jesus Show.
Moonshine